Hey y'all, welcome to Fountain City Church's weekly sermon. Here at Fountain City, we believe in multiplying families of missional disciples both locally and globally, and we really hope that this sermon encourages you to do the same. If you live in the area, make sure to join us on a Sunday. Thanks for watching.
I want to invite you to just open your Bibles to Psalm 23. We're going to read verses 1 through 6, and I'm just going to read it slowly, and I want to ask you to just open your hands in a posture of receiving what the Spirit wants to say to you. This is for you. This isn't for the person beside you. It's not for that person on the back side of the room. This is for you this morning. And so maybe you're in a hard-pressed season where you need a good reminder that God is with you. He gives it here today. In Psalm chapter 23, verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside quiet waters, and he restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And this morning we're going to focus on verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What kind of story are we in? I think it's one of the questions that Psalm 23 subtly answers for us, and it's a picture that not any one of us would choose for ourselves. In our culture, stories all have this kind of pretty familiar plot line. Like, we build our lives to be these little safe havens from the reality of a really scary world outside of us. But if we were to stop and just compare our lives to what like film genre you want it to be like, many of us would say, I'd really like this to be a romance or a comedy. I think this thing needs to be sci-fi if you're into that. But I think every single one of us recognizes that this is more of an epic drama than anything else. Like, this is far more Lord of the Rings than You've Got Mail, you know? And in these moments, we face this reality that Psalm 23 holds out to us. I think it's why we like the momentary escapes from reality that rom-coms and holiday films offer to us. There's very little conflict. Everyone lives without danger. The guy always gets the girl. But reading Psalm 23 is this confrontation with the reality of a broken world. It tells us that life is not a romance or a comedy, that it is this tale of overcoming and of hope. It's the picture of a people on this desperate journey through challenge and hardship and despair, and the God who buoys us through the storm and leads us to this unimaginable future where everything, every hurt, every pain, every loss, every challenge is somehow redeemed through his life and death and resurrection. David seems to say that there is this inevitable journey for all of us, that it's going to lead us through these inescapable crises. These moments that we can't sidestep, no matter what we do, places we would never choose for ourselves. Now, I believe that's going to look different for each one of us in our own stories, but Psalm 23 is God's promise to us of what can and will come out, what can and will be produced from hardship and testing when we hold onto his hand. This is the promise of what your worst season can look like, that you have a God who is shepherd. And he is so close to you that the darkest night has no fear for you because you can hold on to him and he only leads you forward. He writes, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. The mountains all through the Bible are code for where God's voice and his presence are revealed to us. I don't know about you, when I go up to the top of a mountain, I have this sense of revelation. I feel like my head clears and my heart clears. I feel like I can hear from the Lord better. Anybody else? Like, it's just natural to me. There are beach people and there are mountain people. Maybe if you're from Maine, there are beachy mountain people. Okay? But I know when I get up to a high place, I feel like I can get vision. I can get clear. And the Bible kind of echoes that. Abraham encounters God on Mount Moriah. Moses receives the law on Mount Sinai. Peter, James, and John see Jesus transfigured on the mountain. That's the place of clarity and vision. That's where breakthrough happens. But the valleys? The valleys represent places that are obscured with shadows and danger. The valleys are where predators lurk behind rocks and enemies lay in wait to overtake you. The valleys are where the sun is cut off early and the darkness kind of closes in around you. And the psalmist says that we all walk through valleys of shadow in the fear of death. Not even if we walk, he writes, even though we walk. He says it's not unusual. It's not out of the norm as much as I want it to be. It's not something that only happens to some of us. We will all pass through those kinds of valleys. And our culture is one of the most sophisticated when it comes to creating an illusion of safety. We medicate to postpone pain. We use creams and pills to cheat age and delay death. But David says there is no plan or medication or pill that will keep you from passing through this valley. And many of you today, maybe you're not part of the Evenson tribe. If you're part of this church, you are. But many of you are passing through that valley today. You are going through something that you wouldn't wish on anybody else. Be it age or sickness or loss. Many of you are going through silent hardships. And the sobering reality for all of us is that we will all face moments like that. All of us. And David shockingly says to us that when you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you don't have to fear evil because he's with you. Now think about that for a moment. I love that verses 1 through 3, if you were here last week, they tell us what God is like. I love the what God is like passages, that God is my shepherd, that he makes me to lie down in green pastures, that he leads me beside the quiet waters, that he restores my soul, that he makes me walk in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Check, 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 check. I want all of it. And then in verse 4, we discover the place where that God exists. That he is not the God who just lives up on the mountains. That God himself, the one who provides for us and protects us, the one who shows up for us day in and day out, week in and week out, that he makes himself known in the valley. But if we're honest, we think that revelation of God just happens on the other side of problems, don't we? Like verses 1 through 3, they must exist completely detached from the God of verse 4, from the valley. I can experience God, but the second that I'm in the valley, and somehow it's not true any longer. We can't possibly imagine that that's the description of what God is like there in the valley of the shadow of death. I mean, how can that be true? How can what we read in verses 1 through 3 that are so encouraging and so uplifting exist there? How can we say we won't fear when the valley is full of nothing but opportunities to be afraid? This is one of those confrontations we face in the Word. David actually says to us that when you are consumed with insurmountable situations, and when you face obstacles that have the ability to swallow you up, you can still choose to reject fear as the deciding leader of your life, and you can fix your eyes on Jesus, because even in the valley of the shadow of death, we know that he's with us. Now, do you feel the nearness of that? This is one of those confrontations with our faith, because every single one of us knows what it is to believe in something so deeply, so firmly, and then face something that shakes our reality, and we cling fast. We have to hold on tight to the reality of who God is and what it is that he has promised to us. It's not on the mountaintop that God's goodness always gets displayed fully. Often it's in the valley. It's in the places where we are desperate and broken. It's in the places where we long for something to change, something to shift, long for understanding and don't find it. And there, I can see God's face clearly. I can see that he is the God who knows how to walk with me through the dark. That he does not depart. He doesn't abandon us. He holds you by the hand and teaches you how to walk there. That's why we don't have to fear. Because it's there that I get to experience. It's there. It's in the valley. It's in the valley. Not on the other side of the valley, not before it, not after it. He is the God of the valley. And he's the one who will show us his goodness and his grace and his mercy there in the middle. Folks, faith in Christ is not pretending that bad things don't happen. It is not the power of your confession that there is no valley of the shadow of death. You know where that doesn't work? That doesn't work in the valley. No, it is so much better. It is so much better than that. David says that faith is being able to walk through the darkest moment of your life and trust who he is and what the ultimate outcome will be because he is with you. It is being anchored by something that doesn't end on this side, that actually extends into eternity. It is being anchored in the promises of God, that when you can't see them with your own eyes and you don't feel like they were fulfilled on this side, that God has promised he will fulfill every good thing in his presence and with his people. We're anchored to something that is bigger than us. The other night I got the chance to just go over to Donald and Sandy's house, and if you've ever been around them for any minute, their house is full of people all the time. It's like a refugee camp over there. And it's always been like that. They just take people in, they absorb people. And they've gone through the greatest loss this week. And we sat around in the backyard and just worshiped. And I was just really, really impacted by that level of strength that you have to fight for. That's not automatic. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes we think that kind of faith is just this automatic thing. It's just switched on and you just kind of roll. No, you have to choose that. And I got to watch people choosing to hold on to God's hand. Just choosing, just digging in. What you saw this morning with Daniel and Tori leading is people choosing to hold on to God's hand. I can't get the image out of my mind of you and me as sheep walking behind the shepherd into this valley that is covered in dangerous, scary-looking shadows. And the terror that would come from that, from us, little sheep with no control over the situation, the terror that would come with that somehow completely dissolves because we are already standing in the shadow of the shepherd who walks in front of us. The thing that would cause us terror, I can't possibly endure a life standing in the darkness. You say, actually, I've lived my life in the shadow of the shepherd who is life. I may walk in the valley of the shadow of death, but I live in the shadow of life. I stand there so close to him. And some of you are there this morning and you need to be reminded that that thing does not define who you are or where you're headed or what the outcome will be. What you see on the horizon doesn't do it. It is the face of the one in front of us. It's the goodness of the one in front of us. Psalm 91:8, 91:1 says, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Folks, this is your inheritance. This is your inheritance. You've been invited to live in the shadow of the Almighty. And when you feel like you're standing in something that will swallow you alive, you can look forward and you can say, I reject that notion because he is good and he's with me. I can keep my feet and I can continue to walk even when I feel like I can't get more than one step. I recognize that I get to live in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. He is my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. This is a faith and a promise that extends beyond this life into eternity. This is something that buoys us and takes us further. This is the promise we hold when we belong to him. God will overshadow you in the valley of shadow, and it will hold no fear for you. Folks, we are a people of defiant hope because we are his sheep. We are not a people of hope because bad things don't happen. We are a defiant people of hope because even when the worst comes, we know that the worst has been swallowed up with life in Christ. Because he is with us. So if you're in the valley today, David invites you to run to the Father. Get so close to him that you can't help but to stand in the safety of his shadow, the shadow of life. Run to the Father. There is something about the valley of the shadow of death that forces us. We feel like we have to just figure things out on our own. We cover our faces and we hide our hearts. And God says, come near to me. Hide in my shadow. You don't have to fear these things. I'm with you. And if you're there today, get close. Get so close. I can't help but to get away from the picture of standing in my dad's shadow when I was a little kid. You know, when the sun is bright in that Georgia heat, or for me growing up in South Carolina, and that piercing light would hit you, and the first thing you do to get clear is to stand in someone else's shadow so that it keeps obscure the thing that's blinding you. And in the valley, often we get blinded by the threat of danger and heartache. And somehow, if I can just step into his shadow, and if I can just stay close enough, then I can see. I can see. Maybe I don't see the whole thing, but I see the next step. And he takes us by the hand and he leads us himself. Friends, our strength is in his presence. Our identity as a people is his presence. He says, I will fear no evil, not because I'm strong, not because I'm secure, not because I'm confident, not because I have great faith, because you're with me. That's why I fear no evil. We are a people of his presence. And I don't mean a people who just feel his presence. I don't mean a sense of being in his presence. I mean the resilient, defiant, stubborn trust that holds fast to the Lord and his word no matter what comes, because he's with us. When I feel him and when I don't. Are you with me? Yes. When I quickly see him and when I don't. When I escape hardship. And when I am forced to go through hardship and endure it, even there he is faithful and he is worthy of my trust. No matter what the valleys bring your way today, hold fast to the Lord. And when you feel your grip slipping, remember that God's hand is strong enough to hold on to you. I remember when Lily was a little girl. She was so tiny and chubby. She was the best. But when we would go to cross the street, Lily would grab onto my hand, and her little hand was only big enough to hold a finger. You guys remember that stage, dads? Stella's there. Can't hold multiple fingers, can't hold the whole hand. She grabs one finger, and she wraps up. And me as a dad, knowing that her safety is the most important thing to me, I know that that's not enough. And so she thinks she's holding on to me, but I wrap my big hand around her whole little hand, holding on to my finger, and double wrap that thing. You know what I'm talking about? When you're going through the valley and you feel like you've got no strength left to hold on, he's big enough. He's big enough to hold on to you. And he wraps his hand around you and he protects you and he guards you and he holds you so that you can continue forward. David says that's what brings us comfort in the valley. It's his rod and it's his staff. I mean, there is no place like the valley to just prove that it's not our level of faithfulness or our strength or our resolve that keeps us safe. It's God's power at work in us. It's his strength. It's his loving kindness that protects us and guides us and guards us. His rod and his staff aren't just these tools in his tool belt. It's the presence of Christ. It's him. It's the tangible reality that Jesus is with us. He is God in flesh who comes to lead us. Jesus is the rod and the staff of God. You know, the rod speaks to the protection and the government of God. This is a Maasai. This is a Maasai rod from the Maasai tribe. You can tell this thing is built for protection. It's like weighted so that the shepherd can take out any enemy that comes for his flock. But it's also perfect for him to hold and just slowly count the sheep and make sure that each one is protected. Every sheep accounted for. But when the enemy comes, it's a dangerous weapon in the hand of God. This is about the peace of God and his rule over any and every situation in life. A shepherd uses this to comfort and to bring protection. A sheep looking into the shadows of the valley of death can say, there are enemies coming. There are things that can attack. But the shepherd is holding something that is 100% certain to take care of the ultimate attack of the enemy. He never fails. His swing is true. And even in the moments where I feel like I have been taken out, God says, I have once and for all struck down the enemy. You are safe with me. It doesn't mean hardship doesn't come. It means that you can trust me to protect you and to guide you and lead you. I can bring about my kingdom through my power in your life. That word rod is the same word that's used for scepter all through the scriptures too. It's the picture that the same God who protects us is the one who rules over us and knows how to bring about his authority and his power in your life. His rod comforts. As a sheep, you can look at the justice of God and the righteousness of God and say, I can trust him. I don't always understand him. I can trust him. He will bring about his purposes no matter what. And secondly, he says, the staff comforts me. The staff of the shepherd speaks to the leadership and the guidance of the shepherd. This is an old shepherd staff. It's small, it's not big and circular. It's just big enough for a shepherd to put his weight on it and to take the edge of it and to lead these sheep. You know, there's something about the valley that makes us run wild. When people get scared, they do all kinds of things, all of us. When we get scared, we run all sorts of ways, and Jesus is the staff who comes and he gently guides, just nudges. Just a little nudge from the shepherd, and you know, man, I've gotten off track here, or run into the shadows to hide where you're actually more vulnerable, and God slowly pulls you back in. And Jesus is that shepherd. He's the one who can lead us and guide us to the place that we need to go. It's easy when it gets dark for us to lose our way, but Jesus says, I am the way. I'm the way for you to follow. I am the truth that exposes the lies around you and the things that will ensnare you. I am the resurrection life itself. He knows the way. Friends, when we go through the hardest moments in life, you have been given not just a solution to get you to the end of the road, but a shepherd who can guide you. There is no one who can teach us to walk these valleys quite like Jesus. Hebrews chapter 2 verse 17 tells us that for this reason he had to be made fully like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he's able to help those who are being tempted. Now, do you hear that this morning? Do you hear that? He understands you. He is a shepherd who has walked this valley himself. He doesn't lead you down a path that he has never been to. He doesn't take you to a place he knows nothing about. God is not impervious to pain. Does that do something to your theology? That the God of all creation, the God who breathed and cosmos and galaxies were birthed, that God made himself a man and he put flesh on so that he could suffer and look you in the face and say, I know. Me too. You can follow me. And that is precisely what it is that Jesus has done for us. He knew what it was like to lose his earthly father young. He knew what it was to be betrayed by his friends. He knew what it was to be slandered and despised and rejected. He knew what it was to be wrongfully imprisoned. He knew what it was to be physically abused and to be murdered. He alone knows how to lead us through the valleys of loss and heartache and even death and not abandon the voice of the shepherd. He alone knows how to do that. If you're in a desperate situation, if you're in a place where forgiveness seems impossible, Jesus alone knows how to teach us how to walk there. Who is both he is able to get hit by all the same things we got hit by and to stay faithful to the Father with every step. He's the only one that can teach me that. Do you see why he alone is the good shepherd who's worthy to be followed? As we close our time this morning, I just want to read from 1 Peter 4:12. And I really want to make space for many of you who are standing in that valley today. to come and to just rest and wait on the Lord. Allow people to pray over you and love you and speak words of encouragement into you. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12, Peter addresses this shock that we all go through when we hit hardship. I don't know about you, but for many of us, like when I'm following the Lord and when I'm aware that I'm following the Lord, you somehow inadvertently think you're going to take less shots. Anybody? Like years ago, I've got a really bad habit of not washing my car, all right? And years ago, I washed my car after like 6 or 7 months, and immediately somebody hit my car, and I thought, it's the last time I washed that car, you know? And we kind of carry that mentality over into our faith. If I'm being faithful, Lord, I'm not going to take any hits. If I am trusting you, if I'm learning to walk by faith, nothing should happen. And then when it happens, we're kind of left with this big question mark. God, you guys know it. What did I do wrong? God, are you real? Was this true? Has this all been a lie? And I believe in those moments, God delights to just take you by the hand and say, you can trust me right here. That my son, who I sent, has been through everything that you're going through. And he knows how to lead you here where no one else does. 1 Peter 4:12, he says, dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. Listen to that. He says that when we are in Christ, we have permission to see all of those hardships, all of those situations that make no sense, all of those things that feel like they are crushing us and pressing us. He says you are participating in the sufferings of Christ. And for that reason, because you are joining with Jesus in that suffering, you too will receive the glory when God pours it out. Do you feel that? That one day Jesus will receive the full reward for what he suffered. God came in the flesh and they murdered him. His descendants were cut short, Psalm says. His life was cut short. And somehow, the one who seemed to be cut short on this side, God says, I am giving you eternity. The nations are your inheritance. All authority and power belong to you. When you and I, when we hold up under the hardship of suffering in this life and we hold on to his hand, he promises, I will pour out glory onto that part of your story when you hold on to my hand. Everywhere we endure the testing of our faith, God pours glory out. Friends, a journey through the valley tests us. There are things that will come to each and every one of us to shake us, and when we're shaken, that foundation under our feet is put to the test like nothing else. It's in the valleys where we discover if Christ is our foundation or not. And when we endure, he says, you are like gold being refined in the fire, and I will put glory on your life. God will get glory. God will get glory, and you will share in it. I was just thinking this morning, and as I close, I just want to read this one little passage out of Isaiah 43. He says, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. And when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. And when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze, for I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. He's with us. And because he is with us, we will fear no evil. Why don't you stand with me today? Hey, thanks again for watching the message from this weekend. If the Lord moved on your heart through what you heard, we want to encourage you to reach out. If we can pray for you, come alongside of you, partner with you in your faith, we would love to invite you to join with us. Our email address is info@fountaincity.org. Please reach out if you have any questions or if we can pray with you and partner with what God's doing in your life. Thanks.